7 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Approval of the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda?
Yeah, I can support that.
Motion to, in support to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Agenda is approved. Approval of the minutes for December 9th, 2025, Planning Commission regular meeting and public hearing.
Make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
And I'll support that.
Motion in support to approve the meeting minutes as presented. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Call to the public. Hearing none. Move to new business, item 1, Planning Commission Annual Report Discussion. So, I worked with Ross a little bit that, one of the Planning Enabling Act or Michigan Zoning Enabling Act, one of those requires us to put together an annual report to the board, right? Is that report to the board? Yeah. So, Ross went through, drafted it up. I think we already have a few changes or additions of action we did. My thought is we just keep it simple. The things we took action on, put it down as a list. And if anyone has any further questions or comments, I mean, they could ask, but they should all be supported by meeting minutes. And most of these items were either at the board or approved by the board anyway. And if not, they have they file our approved meeting minutes. So there's not a, so I just think we keep it simple with that. So I guess if there's any other thought on the format of it.
So we didn't do anything with REI in there? Sorry, with EI?
Yeah, that's on there. So I had my comments are to add, Ross found 4 different additions. I just said extractive industrial and Liberty House site plan amendment. But then Ross already also found the AmeriGuard.
We have AmeriGuard and we have
Foster.
Yep.
Foster. So that's 4 additions right there that we need to add. That work we did last year, you know. But
Where do you see EI in this?
no, it's not.
Okay.
I added the comment. So
I apologize for
Okay.
that. I don't know what happened, but yeah, this is not the complete list.
yep.
Okay.
We're just here to. That was just a draft.
Okay.
And now we're going to discuss it, and the plan is we'll, you know, if we're all okay with it, we'll vote on it, and then that way, if you haven't heard, you all probably got Greg's email, but the intent is to have a joint Planning Commission board meeting February 3rd. That's tentative. I don't know if it's, I haven't seen the agenda yet. I just was asked if I'm available. I said I'm available, and so if we do, we're going to present that to them, and then we can discuss any of these items or future business or whatever they want. Go ahead, Ross.
As far as I know, I mean, the intent is there will be a joint discussion. I don't know how they're going to structure it. It hasn't been finalized, but we'll know more in the near future, I'm sure. But we will be having a joint discussion. I don't know if it'll be an agenda item on that or if it's an official meeting. They're working out some of the details because it can be done a number of ways. Ultimately, the goal is to get the Planning Commission in front and at least go through the action list, I guess, just to meet the statutory requirements, and then anything else additional would need to be added to the agenda by the board.
You're talking an action list for this report.
Yes, this
Okay.
report.
One other thing I think we should put on the report is how many meetings we held. because there is a requirement to hold a certain amount of meetings, and they say, we held this many meetings.
I can add that, yeah.
Any other thoughts or additions or changes to the annual report?
Just because I don't know what the size request was, although they say size request.
Yeah, I'm not,
We can add more detail. It's the
we
increased
could, but
accessory structure
it's
size.
also like,
I assumed that, but thank you.
yeah, it's also like saying, the Ebby sightline, we established a rear yard setback. Well, what did we establish? You know, why did we establish it? I mean, you know, we could have a 60-page report of, you know, what did we recommend, or what was the changes in this site plan review, you know? I'm okay with adding those, size requests.
I can just ensure that, you know, as far as the titles go, that it's as detailed as possible. Obviously, all the information is available in meeting minutes and whatnot.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually one of the thoughts that I had, was we could just simply state too that the meeting minutes are
Oh,
available
that's a good
here,
one.
you know, for people that
Yeah.
want more detail.
Or just even
So-
statement on there, further information
Yeah.
on these items is available.
Yeah,
See Ross.
well,
Yeah.
and we also have recordings of everything too.
There we
which
go.
is even more in-depth, so.
Yeah.
you know.
And sometimes you can use just simple things like, when it comes to site plans, you say recommended approval or granted approval. So you don't just point out the conclusion.
Yeah,
Like
I think,
recommended zoning amendments to township board. So you just,
Yeah.
that's a conclusion, and they can look at the minutes and.
By statute, we probably don't need to be this detailed, right?
that's what I'm getting at. I like to keep it simple. If someone needs more info, they can, and right on there, contact Ross. Sorry to put that on you, but either you do it now or you do it if someone asks. But
Yep.
I think it's a lot of retyping information that we already have out there. But if someone needs it, they can ask.
Yeah, that's what I'm here for, so, yeah. No problem.
So I think, should we have a recommendation to approve this annual report with the 4 changes, 4 addition action items that we had taken: extractive industrial, Liberty House site plan amendment, AmeriGuard and Foster, and also add a note to see Ross for further information?
I'll make a motion to approve as amended.
Support?
Motion and support to approve the Planning Commission annual report as amended.
Do you want me to go through the lists? Or,
I can go through it if you'd like. I mean, we just have those items that are
right,
showing up there, plus we also have recommendation and board approval for the extracted industrial zoning amendments. I can also include on there that we also reviewed the regulatory, if you'd like.
yep,
Okay.
and the Liberty House site plan
We
amendment.
have the Liberty House site plan minor amendment, which was an approval.
Yep,
We have the AmeriGuard
The AmeriGuard.
minor site plan amendment, which is an approval. And we have the
Foster
Storage
Switch, or
County
not
Special
Foster
Land
Switch, yep,
Use, which is
Foster
an approval.
for, Brendan Foster, yep.
Correct.
Yep.
On those, Russ, I think you mentioned it on Liberty, but I think it's important to mention if it was minor or major. You will be on their
Oh,
approval.
yeah, I have it in my notes as,
Okay.
those are all minor, those are the only ones that can be approved here at
Yep.
this level regardless.
Okay.
But that will be noted.
Did
I
you
will
do
make sure that
subcommittees
the,
after that or no?
Oh, that's a good question.
Sorry.
I think this is Planning Commission, but Kevin's comment was, should we add any subcommittee items on there? My vote is not unless it's required by, because
My
some of
motion
those-
stands.
some of those
Okay.
items are not even developing. They're just, there was an idea someone had,
yeah,
and
there's nothing official.
it goes away.
Yeah, there's not actually, unless there's applications submitted that actually make it to the planning commission for
Yeah.
action to take place, then no. That-
All right.
That's,
Then my original motion stands, the amended.
okay.
So we,
And also, in addition, we're going to include on the list the number of meetings held.
Yes,
number of
yes,
meetings held.
so that was the
That's-
fifth thing,
That's another amendment, okay.
yes.
So we have a motion and support to approve the Planning Commission 2025 annual report as amended, as Ross stated. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Planning Commission annual report is approved. Moving to old business, item 1, accessory structure regulations.
So I apologize for not being here during the last meeting. I did review the recording and I made some changes to the draft text based on those comments that were made during the last meeting, at least to the best of my ability. The changes are going to start here on going to be the second physical page, the third page numerically. Apologize for no page numbers. The draft revisions to modifications of requirements. So going through that, I didn't see a lot of feedback. I'm looking at the standards here. I'm seeing that a lot of them are potentially compatible without change. That's what we'll want to discuss. The only change that I made to that is going to be the next page down. Yep, so the only change that was made to this is simply, instead of it being a increase in size up to 1,200 and a height increase of up to 2 feet, I just changed A to a detached accessory structure may be permitted in a side or rear location subject to compliance with blah, 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 blah. Then we still have number 2 that's going through the specific conditions that are to be reviewed by the Planning Commission. That's what I need feedback from, is each of those items, A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's basically it. So I'm just looking for any feedback you have, if we want to modify those requirements, if we want to remove any of those requirements, or if we want to delete any of those requirements. My personal opinion is, I mean, it covers a lot. It would still be subject to site plan review. It's still subject to all the other standards in the zoning district. So you have all of the architectural requirements and whatnot that would still be consistent for compatibility reasons. You know, we've got important details like nuisance factors, orientation of the building, drainage, all of those good things. But again, since we're going through it, I'd like to get any feedback, additions, subtractions, modifications. And you can take time to think about it and digest it, but I looked at it for a good amount of time and I was racking my brain trying to think of, what I could potentially add to this to dial it in, and it's kind of amazing how it lines up pretty well.
Yeah, I think it, the language is all in there for a reason, to go from 800 to 1,200.
Right.
Scrap that because we talked, I think we're all on board with that change, and getting rid of it, but use the same language for the front yard, I think.
And the next section that we're going to get into is just the changes to each of those zoning districts, R1, R2, LK1, to change from 800 max to 1,200 max, which would thereby eliminate the requirement for that modification.
So my main comment in terms of the substance, it's more of a discussion point, I think, than an actual change. But on C sub 5 or V, I like the concept of discretion of the Planning Commission, because I do think it's the Planning Commission that's best situated to decide what is compatible and what isn't. But one thing that comes to the lawyer's brain is if it's that discretionary, if it's that open, and it's up to the Planning Commission, you do run the risk that somebody comes later on and says, all right, well, the decision against me to deny my application was arbitrary, and the Planning Commission shouldn't have gone there. So double-edged sword, you define it more, then you're stuck with the definition that's in there. So I'm not even necessarily sure that I personally think that's the right way to go, but I thought it was something that was worth thinking about. So,
What specific language?
so the compatibility of accessory structures, it's at the very bottom paragraph. 5, Roman numeral 5. That's under 2002G.
The current one or the, okay, so it's the same as in the draft, but now that's going to the front yard.
And I think you could apply my comment equally to the rest of the ordinance as compared to this one too. You know, the potential issues there on either side.
All right, so-
But
I will note that in the districts, in all of the districts where this would be applicable, there is already that requirement if a land use permit comes in.
I was just gonna mention
Then it's
that.
down
Yeah.
to my discretion or my department's discretion.
Right.
This is only for special circumstances, which I think is why it was originally designed, even though it was for an increase, not a yard location, just to be further vetted by the planning commission as opposed to, you know, just us.
Right.
One additional step. But I totally get that, because somebody could easily make an argument.
Right, if it says that it shall be compatible with the neighborhood, it shall, you know, be consistent, then you're eliminating some of the discretion, so you don't have to worry about somebody coming back and saying, well, you just didn't like me.
You just picked on me.
So,
It's like, no, look around you.
exactly, we apply this consistently the way that it's
I
written.
mean, historically,
But-
for all of these, what we're looking for is just residential compatibility. For the most part, I couldn't care less if, you know, it's a color that I don't like, whatever. It's personal preference when it comes to those things. It's more or less about the siding, you know, the presence of a man door, windows, sort of a residential appearance as opposed to agricultural, industrial, which is not permitted in those districts.
Right.
So, I guess, Zach, I think one thing's important is when the planning commission does make decisions on these, it needs to be based on this criteria, and we need to state that, you know, and I think, I watched the video when I left the room last time, I think you did, that one.
We did.
But you gotta make sure that, you don't just say we approve it, you gotta say why, because it
Right.
meets this criteria.
Right.
Or even more importantly, if you deny it, you gotta say
Why you
because
denied
Right.
because it did meet this certain criteria.
It'd be a no-brainer if they come in and they say, I want an unfinished corrugated metal, you know, siding. Then we could say, well, no, that's.
It doesn't.
Or you could
comply.
say,
It doesn't match everything it does.
or you could say, look around and that's what that neighborhood looks like.
Right.
And that is compatible.
Yeah.
Right.
It could be.
Because that could fit out, you know, I'm sure there's a, what would we say?
Maybe not R1, R2.
No, I'm talking farming. But
Yeah.
that wouldn't be us, well,
That's not even here. That's
yeah,
a separate-
but it would be for the front.
Well,
Right?
now we only have it for those districts.
Oh, okay.
We were looking separately for reducing the front yard accessory structures because we do allow it. in
Okay,
RRE.
sorry, I was wrong.
But the limitation was the 20 acres and the 466 feet. That's actually earlier in this
Yeah,
packet.
I was mistaken.
So this is really only applicable to the higher density districts that we have, where it needs to, we don't care about the finish in FR and RE.
Yeah.
Right.
Any other discussion on that specific change there?
If we're happy with it, I'll let it be for now. If anyone does think of anything, if you want to go through it, you know, shoot me an email. I can always update a draft to be reviewed in the future.
I don't know if Mario has any thoughts on the specific standard versus the, because I'm undecided. It's not that I'm advocating for either, I really don't know, so.
Well, the points you bring up are something that everybody struggles with, because you want that flexibility, but you don't want to be so flexible that it becomes arbitrary. The good thing about this is, number one, it's consistent with your other policies and procedures you
Yes.
consider in other areas, so you're being consistent with your practice of how you determine it, and then you specify specific criteria in here.
Mhm.
So that's a good thing that the planning commission would just have to remember when they do consider these, to at least speak to each of these items, the, you know, facade materials, height and size of the structure, roof pitch, and then similar considerations. So to me, that the benefit is like, no, you're being specific, you're identifying the things that you're going to initially consider, and then you're going to leave the door open for yourself to make other items. But I think this is a good way to have that, once again, be consistent, give you the tools you want, And then also the fact that, you know, you're giving people another opportunity that doesn't require going to get a variance. So that, to me, is another option that I think is a good, will frame your approach when you're looking at these. You know, you're realizing, all right, we're not going to rise to the level of someone needing a variance and meeting all those high standards. We're setting a separate level, slightly lower, but still you're being specific. So that's why it's a good approach to basically walk that middle line.
If Mario's happy, I'm happy for what it's worth. So. The only other thing, so I went through the draft in General Ross, and I did notice there's a couple areas where like you referenced square footage. The obvious example is the second paragraph on the first page, and you've got the number changed, but then the written text word is still the old number.
Yeah,
That's just a minor update, but just so it's on your radar. So.
That's something that I should have done before.
No worries.
Yeah, that all needs to be cleaned up. As with this next section that we'll get into, if everyone's happy with this portion for now. So, yeah, moving on to this, also super minor change. Not everything that could potentially be addressed has been changed. The only change made to the R1, R2, LK1 in this draft is the minimum changing from 800 to 1,200 and deleting the provision for the increase. Now, assuming that we're happy with the changing that section for the yard location, then I would then go ahead and make updates to the yard locations subsections of these. That's a simple change. It's just basically taking those deleted sentences and moving them over to the yard location section. Just wanted to make note of that. And those are the only changes that I've made, assuming that I heard everything from the last meeting.
What's our next steps on this item?
Next steps is I would love to know if there's any additional feedback on the changes that were presented tonight. Specifically, the modification of requirements. I think that's the most critical portion of this. I think if we're happy with this, then I can just kind of make the changes. If there are any changes at this point, kind of file it away, and I can move down the list onto the next one.
Yeah,
Accessory structure item.
I think so. I mean, we can always go back if there's changes, if someone rethinks it or something, but what is the next item on
I
this?
don't think we're quite to the ADUs yet. There's still a few little sections, subsections that I can bring up, you know, based on what we generally get inquiries about, what we generally have problems with. We previously discussed them. I'm not totally prepared to list them off at this time, but I can absolutely have some
Draft language?
yeah, some draft language or at least some topics for discussion available for the next meeting.
All right.
But again, if anyone individually has a thought, you know, you're wake up in the middle of the night and start thinking accessory structures, shoot me an email. I'll make sure to incorporate it so that we can all review and discuss.
Good.
I have an operational question. Is there a way to include this 1 through 5 in a request that we get so that we make sure that we compare that rather than just remembering to go look at it?
I didn't grasp that.
Well,
We're talking about the yard location modification
Right.
portion? Okay.
so if somebody submits a request, can we get this list with it?
I asked them to basically make a statement for each item on the list.
No.
She's saying every time that somebody puts in a request, we get a physical copy of this so we can go list down line by line. Is that how I understand it?
Yes,
Okay.
'cause I feel like
Good.
the last one,
I suppose we could, we
Yeah.
could generate like a checklist.
Just have like a checklist so we could go down the list and be able to just knock it out real quick.
because the last one,
Because we
I
kind of
think
did that
we
with,
backed into it.
yes, yep,
But it'd be better to just,
to be able to,
yeah.
I don't
Yep,
see
good on
any
the list.
reason why we couldn't, it would just basically be taking this form and, adding a section to check or make notes, right? Am I getting that correct?
no, just, all you gotta do is just hand us this at the same time that we do, make it this part of the, part of the packet, part of the packet.
Okay.
And then we can just be like, looking side by side at it.
And-
I had it up.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we did that
when
last
I did
time.
it, when I did it last time, I brought it up in there, and
But
I'm like, let's
I
go
also
through the
think it's
list.
important to tell the applicant, here's what they're gonna be judging on.
Yeah,
Oh, we do.
Right.
I know,
Yeah.
I'm sure you
They
do.
submit their
So then they're
application
not
based on
sitting there
that.
saying,
like, oh crud.
oh, what siding? I didn't think of that, but,
Oh, we try to vet those things as much as possible.
All right.
before we
Okay.
get it to you.
Yeah, and if it's vetted internally, that makes sense, but even putting it in the application, that came up, I don't think it'd be a horrible idea, because you
That's
give
no
the
problem.
applicant notice that we need that data. I mean, if we don't know what the siding looks like, then, we wouldn't be in a position to make a decision anyway. But whatever's easiest for you, Ross.
Yeah,
and
it's-
so,
I don't mind. It's
I like her idea of like the spoon feed personally, that's like,
Yeah.
that's a really great idea.
Very little extra effort, I think that.
Yeah,
really
if we just
helps.
we put the work on you, come on
It'll
Ross, you
help
got this.
clarity, it's all good. I like that idea.
Yeah, I think it's great. Yeah, I mean, even making it part of like the application for them so they know,
Well,
so they can just have the
I'll-
answers ready to go, bing, bang, boom,
Yeah.
start nailing these out when they come up to it.
any other discussion on accessory structure regulations?
That's all that I have.
Okay, moving on to old business, item 2, data centers. So, still at the beginning stages of this ordinance revision, or ordinance development, I would say. And I'll let Mario go ahead and provide any update. We don't have a draft yet available at this time, and I think that, to me, that's something that we gotta work toward to have to start making, then we can see it and make changes. But I think while you give us an update, maybe give us some ideas on what input you need from us now to start with that draft.
Well, honestly, I think we had a really good discussion at the last meeting. It gave me a lot of direction, and I think we covered a lot of the topics that, broadly speaking, that we're going to consider. So basically, the next step in the task for me was to provide you a structure of the ordinance, so that way you can at least evaluate how it's going to be organized. You
Yeah.
guys haven't gotten to that point yet, kind of got bogged down a little bit in trying to get additional research, doing our research and trying to get more quantitative aspects of this, because, we talk about things like the actual electrical demand for these things, and the actual, when it comes to cooling, what really is necessary, and the alternatives for that. And those specifics was related to these data centers. We talked about it, that it's based on the size of them, from the smaller ones that fit in a business park for a normal business up to a hyperscale. But honestly, it's hard. The industry isn't very forthcoming with those details in terms of what kind of quantity gets to the point. Because I do think the best approach is going to be to try and find a way to quantify that. And then, when it comes to this point where they're going to be such a burden on adjacent property owners, access to these utilities, and capacity of the grid, that might trigger, and it's an approach used in others, is might trigger the applicants then being required to do some kind of community benefit agreement. To have some type of situation like that. You've got to the point where this is beyond a standard use that could be adequate, that is sized and scaled to fit into the community. You're beyond that. So you need to, even though they're going to do that, all right, that's fine, but we're going to have a sit down. We're going to have might have to be amending the master plan too, like we did with the others. But we're gonna say, we plan for these, if we have to have them, we're gonna plan for them where they could go. We're not gonna, I still don't think we should rezone them yet. But then, right, if you get to this size and scale and this much of an impact, we're gonna have to go through a process of saying, all right, how are you gonna ensure that your proposed use is going to become a benefit to the community, not just us, not just the community
Right.
having to accept you because we're being told they have to.
Right.
So that gathering that information is what's gonna be important.
So just to confirm, I kind of want to put it out there. Ross, there's no applications,
No.
nothing. Okay, so it's just total conjecture, total speculation that if people say that there is any coming to Tyrone Township, it's just flat out false, correct? I want to put that out there.
No,
Okay.
the board put a moratorium into
Right.
effect to get it in front of it.
To get it in
Because
front.
other communities were seeing applications.
Correct.
Just like we did with the solar.
Yep,
Just like we did with wind, just like we did with battery.
great. I thought that
Just trying to be proactive.
right. And I think that we need to just, make sure that we come out and say that. So that's number one. Number two, as far as, having some sort of community benefit, is concerned. I think it's a phenomenal idea. It's funny, I was kind of talking to a couple people up here and I said literally the exact same things. I'm like, you know what? We need to have, on these larger scale projects, you can't stop progress, but you can try to control and put these sort of protections in place for our community, right? We have a community that has overwhelmingly stated that they want to remain rural where possible. And I think that definitely backing that statement up, we need to. But having that community benefit, I think is kind of like that double down, right? Like saying, hey, you know what, in the instances where we can't do this, we're going to at least make sure that they somehow can improve our community. So in order to control that progress, right? So, yeah, it's funny that you brought that up because I literally was mentioning it on a phone call to John here tonight because I was like, how can we go and benefit? Like, what can we do with not just this project, but forward thinking to really all of our projects, right? Anything that's new, how can these businesses benefit our township? So, like for instance, our taxes. What can we do to lower our taxes? Again, right, this isn't something that we choose, it's something the board chooses, but it's still something that, we should definitely be thinking about, for sure. Yeah, I just thought that was really interesting that you brought that up.
And actually, that's my thought processes too, because we know we've dealt with other issues in the past, and where there might be others coming up, and we're dealing with data centers now. And you're absolutely right, there's no talk of any data center coming to the township as far as I know. So this is the benefit of the leadership of the township is that we're saying, hey, let's take a look at this now, and that's the whole purpose of the moratorium, is to give us time to talk about the issue. But it could be also applicable to all the other issues, because to me, that's the best approach, would be you being consistent. And in probably two ordinances, but we want the zoning ordinance to focus on zoning characteristics, and then generally, the other communities that have community benefit ordinances would be another separate ordinance that's in the general law ordinance. But the idea would be, the community is planning a master plan. It's based on historically how we've developed as a rural community, and historically how we've been going at our own pace. We've got a pace that we're comfortable with and we're planning for. And now, if someone comes in with a particular use that escalates it to more than what is anticipated in the next 10, 20, 30 years, all right, if you really want to make the community shift in its rate of growth, we have to talk about, all right, how can you, A, make sure that any of these impacts from this development are going to, A, not negatively impact the adjacent, and then also, B, make sure that it provides a benefit to accommodate that future growth you're suddenly asking us to accommodate. And it might be, and I do think in the end, there'll be a way that, all right, you're asking for this, we're not necessarily going to that, but the benefits should be such that it would be a way to allow any of these type of uses and not have it be a drastic change where suddenly we're changing everything about the township. It's like, how in this area can it be accommodated and not greatly
And not feel like they're getting
change the
screwed
road.
over,
Exactly.
and, yeah, right.
in that area, in that particular area. So it's big. So at this point in time, like I said, I haven't had a chance to finish up, but definitely, you know, by next week, we should be able to, prefer your packet for the next meeting, whenever that is, we can have at least a structure of the ordinance.
Yeah.
Talk about the topics, and then move on. And if you agree with the structure, then the next thing would be to, how I like to work is, you know, give you some draft text, let you react to it, and then you see, you know, how if we're in the right direction with that first draft.
I'd like to see the other townships, maybe a list of the other townships that do have some sort of moratorium in place, that are actively working on some sort of ordinances, and how far they have gotten, and like, it, you know, as far as ideas are concerned. I mean, I saw an interesting map this last week that showed, you know, the possible areas of, you know, where all of the certain electrical lines were that could house, you know, X, Y, and Z. I don't know, just, it was interesting to be able to see that and notice that, you know, we're in, well, actually that was solar, sorry, never mind, that wasn't data center. But still, either way, I'd be curious to see how far away they were with data centers, and seeing, like, you know, because this is kind of like new for all of us. So I want to make sure that we make educated decisions.
I will say, like, at least in other communities that are looking into this, some of them are trying to do it after the fact, so they're trying to play catch up.
Yeah.
Others, like Tyrone, are trying to get ahead of the game, and then a few are kind of spread out all over things, just in terms of what's going on. And so in terms of the communities we've looked at so far, they're kind of all over the country, because it is kind of not completely a nationwide issue, but it is in general, just it's a 21st century issue.
Right.
We all, in theory, are benefiting from these services. Well, they're telling us they need these. This is the infrastructure, so it's a matter of where they're being located.
I mean, the more data, the better, as far as getting the data to us. The more data, the better that we can take a look at what other townships and stuff are doing, I think, so.
Real quick, regarding that, you just talked about the power lines.
Yeah.
Brought a thought up. Greg sent that email,
Yeah, that's where it was from.
and I figured we should share that with the whole planning commission, because I didn't do that. I should have, or we should have, but it was basically just someone, I don't know, a resident or some the citizen advocate Armada Township. So someone from a different community sent this to Greg, who basically said, analysis of proposed data center developments in Michigan revealed clear and concerning pattern. The majority of large-scale AI data infrastructure projects are being sited near high-voltage transmission lines at or above 310 kilovolts. 220 to 100 or 132 kilovolts do not appear to attract these mega projects. So, I mean, stuff we already knew, but, you know, it seemed like someone had done some research. I'll forward this email on. Ross, would you do that? I'm not sure if I have everyone's. Forward that on to the planning commission, and then there's a link to show the lines, which is helpful. I mean, I think
it was really cool.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I was, you know, especially working through the master plan development, we worked through this.
We have two sets?
In our township, well,
Really only just one.
only one.
Towards the north.
Yeah,
North end.
The one that goes east-west?
Yeah, it's like a
Yeah.
425. Is that a
The big
That's
one.
my property.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
goes right through yours.
There's the big one, and then the other, according to this,
There's one south of Center.
Right, but that one's
How do I
just
get-
a small substation.
how do I get
Or
my,
just a small sub.
legend here?
Not even, oh. I was gonna say,
Oh, it's
you
labeled.
just clicked on it, yeah. Like I remember, like you click on each one of these little tiny little doobly-doos, and then it'll show up.
what is it? Oh, right there.
Yep.
This Blackfoot Madrid.
345, that's it.
Blackfoot Madrid is the big purple one, and that's crossing kind of,
Just north of us.
yeah, right
Yep,
south of, yeah.
south of Runyon there.
Oh, something.
So that's,
Yeah.
South of Foley, north of
North of
Foley.
Foley,
Yeah.
south of,
north of Foley. Let me put my screen on.
south of Runyon there.
I can't do that on here, can I? Anyway, this map, it doesn't allow me to put the aerial on, but yeah.
I'll say, and then click on like one of those, you can kind of break it apart real quick, because each one of those is a tension, a tower tension.
Power.
Yep.
Yeah, so, anyway, we'll also share that with you. I don't think it's any huge surprise, but it's kind of confirmation that if you don't have one of those in your township, you're probably pretty, or nearby, you could be not on the radar of an AI data center or data center in general.
No, this is
Data
solar.
centers.
I thought it was solar.
No.
Was it? No, it is data center.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because they need
You're
the
right.
power.
They need the power, you're right, it was data center. Yep.
You know, I mean, they kind of, both of them like to be by it, right?
Right,
So anyway, it's just,
so yeah, it was
Well,
data center.
definitely that's the kind that is, the low-hanging fruit, if you will. Like,
Yeah.
You could get right next to one and then just hook up.
yeah.
Obviously, that's easy for them. But I think one of the things that might start factoring in is like, again, it's hard to get the details from these people. But like, I've heard some that also said, oh, no, don't worry now, we're gonna use geothermal. I'm like, okay, well, in theory, that could be anywhere, but I don't know, because it's once again, they might say that, but but what kind of investment is needed to get that much power out of the ground? And is that really feasible or not? And so, but it's one of those things where they might not consider that feasible until if a lot of the communities right adjacent, or if there's no land available, they consider a lot of things, and unfortunately that's why it's kind of like a moving target, and unfortunately that's why it's kind of been some of their approaches, is they want to just throw a bunch of darts at the dartboard and see what sticks. Because then they can also feel like, all right, this community we're going to try, all right, we're going to back out, and then another one, because it's just the way that, so far, it seems like that might, well, I think it'll be the approach they'll start taking, because honestly, the ones that are always in the news, they're larger ones, and they're large because they're major players, and I think then that they, at this point, they might be putting a lot of their eggs in one basket.
It kind of validates that the fact that we need to be extra proactive on making sure that we have everything in place, or as many things as possible in place that we can think of. So, because you don't know if they're throwing everything at the table, right, everything at the wall, see what sticks, and we need to make sure that we protect everything on the wall.
Right. I was able to do a fair amount of reading over the holiday on this issue, and something that struck me is something that I hadn't thought of until I was reading some of these pretty good articles, which I'll gladly share with anybody that wants to look at them, where the sneaky cost of the electrical component of this. Because if you think about it, our electric grid is this concept that we all benefit from the improvements and expansion of the grid. So the cost is spread out over the state. So it's a bigger issue than just Tyrone Township, but some of these other states that are seeing a lot of development are seeing their electrical rates go up significantly, because what the utilities are doing is they're building out these big projects and expanding the grid to accommodate them, which they have every incentive to do, since they're going to get, well, and they make money off of it. I mean, they're selling the electricity. So then that cost gets passed on to the residents of the state as a whole, because their electrical rates go up to build out the improvements. So I don't know that we can necessarily fix that issue completely, because if somebody, in a different township has one of these developments, causes our rate to go up, there's nothing we can do about that, but it's something to think about. Maybe we can at least address that issue in our ordinance as well. And so.
Mario, so back to the draft, maybe you call it like a structure, say like an outline, even if it's just, okay, what's section 1 and 2 and blah, blah. But we're gonna get to the section when it's like, here's factors that we wanna regulate. And I think I would like to see that drafted without even the value in there. You can just leave the value blank. Or you could come and say, here's 3 other examples where we've seen this value and highlight that yellow. Maybe it's setback, maybe it's noise allowance at the property line, or just different things like that, but don't get focused on that value, and then we can at least bring that to the planning commission, and then we can discuss what are those values we want. And I think the biggest one that we all need to start thinking about is the location. Is it gonna be is it gonna be in a certain zoning district, or is it gonna be overlay? You know, so.
Nope, that sounds good, yeah, so that
And,
way we need to discuss it.
just thinking out loud, you know, we're probably gonna have to go back to a thought on solar, is like, how much land do we need to have in that district to make it reasonable and not get a lawsuit for exclusionary zoning?
Could we have some overlap? If we were to do the overlay route, there could potentially be overlap.
Overlap of what?
The renewable energy and.
Oh, it could be it could be identical, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not gonna have a overlay map for asphalt plants, concrete plants, and every single industrial use, and then it's like, yeah, they're all gonna be
Yeah.
overlapped, in my opinion. You know, I mean, we're not setting a little piece for each of those potential uses out there. So that's a big one, you know, the location. And right now, like say, just for example, we said we would allow this in industrial. And we got, you know, different definitions of industrial, but then you would go to the future land use map, and we really pared that down. And, you know, and then we had to kind of shift gears and have an overlay for the renewable, because they're gonna they need a reasonable amount, right? So we gotta kind of think about that, you know.
Can you define reasonable?
Well, we were,
The state is kind of dictating that for the.
well, so for renewable energy,
For renewable,
they had
but-
an they had a megawatt
right, allowance.
thing, and then you could equate that to an area, and that kind of, our attorney guided us on that area.
Right.
And what do we say, what were we, like 350 or something like that, right?
Yeah, it's like 350 acres.
So, I don't know if there's any guidance yet on that, because they're not, because they, at least from my research, a data center could be the size of this room, or it could be the size of 20 Walmarts, right? You know, so, I don't know how to do that. And also, on that same topic, I think we're gonna get to a point, and we're gonna wanna have to talk to a legal expert on that. So, just thought, I don't know.
Be nice to try to find some sort of special counsel for that.
Yes, I think,
We're gonna need to contract with somebody eventually, I think, for this.
I think so too. And I don't know who that is. I think we'd leave that up to the board, but I think if we kind of work through our, hopefully in the future, we get ourselves a nice planning commission ex officio, and we can work that path and say, hey, we want you know, special counsel, because we're gonna have some of these unknowns to answer, so we can protect ourselves.
And one thing I'll just point out, I'll broach right now and see what you guys think about, is I definitely agree that, like, dealing with it and making sure that we're not opening the township up to any kind of lawsuit or anything in terms of, you know, whether we're exclusionary or not. That is definitely an approach to take. However, I think then probably the thing about consultants, whether it's the attorney or myself, is that to lay out in front of you the options, and then the township then take its approach as how much, I don't know another way to put it, like a bend don't break situation, you know, where you're like, all right, in this way we're gonna, if we choose this side of the spectrum, you know, it'll be more restrictive, we're not having that many options. There might be a higher probability in theory that we get approached or sued even, but on the other side, oh yeah, we might allow for them more and like even open it up more, and then, but then the benefit of that is there can be a much lower probability of being sued. And the only reason I say that is, while I definitely appreciate the idea of like trying to make it foolproof, I think an attorney will tell you there's
There's
no
no
way that you could ever make anything foolproof. And so it's a matter of, like I said, making that choice. And honestly, from my experience, I've heard of some of these other type of uses that are not, you know, are not are not desirable in the community. Because I dealt a lot with adult uses, and I dealt a lot with sexually oriented businesses, something that they call it. And a lot of times, some communities erred on the stronger side of limiting them, because the idea of like things like, hey, we can't be responsible for the vagaries of the real estate market. We're not going to go and zone everything and get everything ready for you just because we don't want to be sued. We're not going to like plan it so that it's planned and zoned and ready and the field is ready to go. We're not going to do that. So they go on the stronger side, and they're like, hey, if we're, and especially some of the smaller communities, they're like, hey, sure, we waive all the rewritten disorders, and suddenly the only way you can have this is like in the middle of an existing industrial business. You know, some go that far, and then they're like, it's not our fault, that's just the way the market works, and it's responsibility of those people to go and get that. And I will say for those type of uses, it's a little bit different, because they don't have any resources, and that market is obviously smaller. So maybe having, you know, a little bit more leeway is there. And I think one way also to approach this is the idea of, we have the data centers, but also maybe include that in the, include solar, include maybe wind, but the other ones that might we might have a detrimental impact to the township, and then we be like, well, we don't have to plan one for all of them per se. You know, it's like, we got our area. It's not our fault that the data center showed up before the solar. That's what happened. If you want to put in a solar farm with this data centers, go buy them out. That's the real estate market. So that's just one option. I mean, obviously, we will give you the tools. We will set it up for you so you can make the choices, and then you can make that decision as to how, what tact an approach that the township will take. But I do think, I don't know.
Yeah,
It's just always hard, the idea, because like if somebody's going to sue you, they're going to sue you no matter what. There's nothing you can do to prevent it. But I do think, having said that, obviously we will make it and craft it with the best legal advice in the approach to the township.
yeah, I think, you know, talk about like the location and size. I just feel like it's the township's best interest for us to have control. And so if we can take the issues that we deem these certain things issues, environment, all these other issues, and we regulate it to the extent to protect the township, we still have control. But if we go to the side of, okay, we're just going to only regulate it based on the size, and then that's deemed exclusionary zoning, then we lost all control. Then we can't say we don't want the noise, we lost the control.
Absolutely.
So, rather regulate through any of the potential negative effects rather than, losing our control through a exclusionary zoning lawsuit.
And I think, no, absolutely, and I think that's a good approach, and I also think, to me, then, a reasonable operator, they come in and they look like, in the ordinance, say, hey, these are the rules we wrote down, this is the playbook, if you can work with us, we'll work with you.
Yeah.
Because then at that point, the township says, hey, this is what we're comfortable with, and then maybe you get a reasonable person, and then they need something that, all right, this is something that's acceptable and worked out for everybody, and, but you're absolutely 100% right, yeah, you can't just have it so narrow that you lose that control.
Any further discussion on data centers? I think one thing we have talked about, but we want to, and I'm glad Ross is coming back for this discussion, but I think we need to start talking about schedule. And, the moratorium was set up for 6 months with the potential 6 month extension. So I think somehow, I don't know the timeframes and dates, but I think we need to really start to think about when we want to have this adopted, which there's a lot of work to get it adopted that goes beyond this planning commission. So work backwards from there and then have some flexibility too. And that's gonna be a schedule that we come up with, we can talk about. I don't know, it's just a thought, if we had a,
Maybe,
if we had a joint meeting with the board, we could
Yep.
say, here's our initial thoughts, you know, on our schedule. Are we way off or, you know?
What I can do is also provide a schedule based on, you know, like you just said, exactly you just said before. We'll start with, here's the deadline of the moratorium, working backwards on all the necessary steps, and then that way you can see how much time you actually have to work with. And so at least that's
Yeah.
an idea.
And like, a public hearing would be like a milestone, I would say. A major milestone. We're gonna have many before that, like draft and draft revisions, but we don't wanna go back and forth 5 meetings with just making small changes to the draft. Work towards a major draft, public hearing, but then once even we make a recommendation, you know, with the county review, and what if that doesn't get on the next county's agenda because they can't take it or something, and that could, or they have a lot of comments, and the board wants to send that back to us, you know? And so, you gotta really take into account those, it's not just the county review, meeting in 1 month, the next month, the board review. It could have to go back to the planning commission.
Yep. And then even, you know, having that initial public hearing, you might get a lot of good comments from the public.
Yeah.
Right, yep.
So you're like, okay, we're gonna have to come bring back and like make edits based on the public comments.
Yep.
So that'll add time, so, but I think that'll be important to hear what the direction the community would like to take.
so being cognizant of everybody's time, do you think that we should be pivoting away from the accessory structure, sidelining that until we focus and put all of our focus and effort on data centers? Is that something that we should share time? I'm just trying to what are your thoughts on
I
that
think it's worthwhile to keep it on.
Okay.
We don't spend a lot of time. That was
And
not
know
under,
we need to work on
that's
it.
not under moratorium. We can say, we have so much to go over on this next data center draft. If accessory structures, we're still working on it, it's on the agenda, we can say, hey, we don't have any discussion on this meeting, move it to the next. It's not a big deal because we're not under a moratorium on that. So, I'd say keep it on, but I would say let's be careful not to add any other of our list that we, you know,
Yeah, we want.
At this time.
To be the primary.
data centers primary,
We'll just keep
and
on
we,
this.
we gotta think about applications. We don't have any current applications that are currently in the planning commission's court, but, you know, those come up, and when they come up quick, we gotta take action on them. There's a certain time frame you gotta take action on them, so we gotta have to work that in there too.
Yep, absolutely.
And if that comes to the case, then yeah, maybe we move accessory structure regulations even off the agenda for that meeting.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt just to say, we're not discussing it, move on, 30 seconds. You
You
know?
can't predict the future, I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes we get 2 or 3 major applications at once, sometimes we won't see one for, 2-3 months.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to put it out there so then we can at least make that consideration.
And then going back to the discussion about master plan, so say we did want to change future land, say we did want to change data center zoning for a certain district, and then we reviewed our master plan, our future land use map, and that didn't accommodate reasonably that a data center development, and so we wanted to go back and change the master plan, which is a good chance we're going to want to do this. We got to take into account changing that. Then you got to send that to different reviews. I don't know them all off the top of my head. Ross knows that, but there's a lot of steps to these.
Yeah.
So I think we want to take that into account on the schedule too, potential master plan revisions.
I don't know for sure that, I think that could happen following, but I'm not positive on that. I don't know if, Mari, you have any perspective when it comes to master plan, if that were to be necessary to make an amendment to the master plan, could that be done following adoption, or would that actually need to happen concurrently or prior?
I think it'll be dependent upon the approach we take in the ordinance, because if the ordinance state, if you, actually, as I think about it, it might require doing the master plan first.
So that's something that we'll need to look into.
Especially if we go with like, say, industrial zoning and we didn't have enough. But if overlay map doesn't really account in the master plan, because that's not a future land use map, that's a zoning designation.
Yeah, that's a good point. So that's what my initial thought was, like, I guess it'll depend on the approach we take.
Yeah.
Because like if the approach is, let's use a particular district, then it probably would require going back and looking at the master plan to make sure that the amount of land area is there. Versus if you went with an overlay, like you said, you could pick certain areas that would be accommodating. And then what you do is, then I would suggest then going back to the master plan and after the fact, so that way you could just shore up that, lend that additional support to the overlay. Because at least on the ordinance, if you had the overlay and you did the ordinance, then people could walk in the door and know the direction they're supposed to. But then by amending the master plan, this means want to have double suspender approach, have a two-pronged approach of being like, no, this is the overlay because our master plan supports it. Whereas you could go with the overlay because you can say, this is the overlay because we've done an analysis and this is the area we find as appropriate.
Any further discussion on data centers? All right, moving on to call to the public. Yeah, any items on the agenda or anything else? Okay.
Hello,
Come on up.
my name's Don Pites, I live on Curtin Road. I read about data centers, I'm in business, and you read a lot about this, Wall Street Journal, there's a lot of things going on with data centers. I caution us. I really do caution us. Because, yeah, you might say, well, there's data centers the size of this room, and there's data centers that are bigger than anything you've ever seen before. My only suggestion would be to find an entity or more of an expert on these things. But they're only an expert maybe today. Tomorrow, it's going to be nuclear that they want to run a data center with because they're building small nuclear power plants. Or they're using older car batteries. You can't put those things out if they catch fire. So there's so many things to consider with this. I really suggest we find an entity that can give us more help in this. You could probably find some things, but we should cover the whole state of Michigan and find out who's written some ordinances on these things. One got turned down outside of Hall. They had the meeting at the township hall. You walk in there, no one's there. They had to move it to the high school. You couldn't find a parking place because all the residents, they ended up turning it down and kicking it out. That may happen here, but I don't know. I don't know enough about it. We got to gather some more outside information for some people who have worked on these things, and that's what we need to do. It might cost us some money, but I think we should spend the money. Because actually, my thing would be, why do we need anybody to put a data center in this area? We're not near huge populations or right next door. Who knows about the electricity? There's so many things to consider with this. So if we want to go forward with this, it's brought up. Let's get an entity or several that can help us with more direct things to think about. That's all I have to say. Let's get some help from people who know exactly what is going on with what they've done in the past. Thanks.
Thank you. One thing to mention about other example ordinances, and I've talked to Ross about this before, it is a little bit cautious reviewing someone's ordinance while there's at the beginning stage of drafting it, right? And so Ross has suggested, and I think it's a good idea, he's going to contact the county, and they're going to look at some that they've already reviewed. Is that what we talked about, Ross?
Yeah, if you'd like to do that.
Yeah, so they do a pretty thorough review of things. I don't always agree with all their review comments, but I think it's, you know, maybe there's an ordinance out there that's already got through a planning commission and it's at the county review. That would be a better example than taking, maybe a nearby township that is just starting their development. And it's okay to look at those, I think, but,
Yeah, for reference. But,
Yeah.
We don't want to rely solely on that.
and then, as far as getting an expert, I think a special counsel.
It's so necessary.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with that stuff, that public comment. Yeah, an external entity is super important, I think, here.
Any other public comment? Hearing none, move to miscellaneous business.
I had one thing that I wanted to talk to the commission about from the ZBA meeting last night. I think it's more of a board issue because it's regulatory as compared to zoning, but it's something the board theoretically might be interested in looking at. It's a very unusual unusual scenario where an individual who'd been convicted of certain crimes allegedly had cameras down the property line that were facing a public beach area, with the crime being something that would cause that to be a concern. And what was stated, and I haven't run this by the attorney for the township or anything like that, but one of the things that came up during the meeting was that there's nothing on the books on the township side that would prohibit that sort of a thing. I think the individual property owner has remedies that they can pursue, so not necessarily saying the township should or shouldn't have that, but it was an issue out there that affected, I think, a pretty large number of residents, so I figured it was worth mentioning, so.
Yeah, Rich sent that over to look at, and I didn't watch the meeting, but I guess some questions I would have is, you know, what's allowed, like, in law? Like, is there like state law or other laws that, you know, like, does a property owner have a right to put up a camera for security reasons?
I think as a general statement, the answer is probably yes, but you get into a more questionable area when, you know, there's a public safety risk that arises, you know, as a result of certain convictions. I mean, I certainly don't think you can prohibit it for somebody who's been accused of a crime, hasn't been convicted of it, you know, that's a different issue.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
Okay. I own a Tesla. When I walk away from it, all the cameras around it turn on. Are you telling me that that individual who wasn't, who's convicted of the crime cannot drive a Tesla because it's, or park it?
What if he parked it by the beach?
That's what I'm saying. What if he parks it by the beach? You kind of know where I'm going with that.
There's challenges with it.
Right,
You're
right.
100% right, and I think sadly the reality is, no matter where you're walking anymore, you're probably being recorded.
Right.
Quite honestly.
And that's where I was going with it.
You know,
I don't feel that this is a planning issue or a land use issue.
It's a regulatory board.
You know, I mean, you would need an attorney to draft a regulatory ordinance, I think. That's my opinion.
and I don't disagree, and I think it's a hard thing to draft in general.
I was gonna say, isn't that even above the township level at that point? Like, it doesn't even, what are your thoughts?
Even if it could be regulated by the township, it's more of a legal issue
Yeah.
than any kind of thing to do with planning or zoning, in my opinion.
And in this particular situation, and again, this is my understanding,
'Cause they wanted to
I
put
could
up a
be
fence.
wrong, but the issue itself had actually been remedied by an order that was entered by a court that was involved in the dispute between the property owners directly, which candidly is probably a better way to have that handled, because then that court is looking at that specific set of facts. Now, this situation is able to review everything that was going on and, you know, make a decision as to whether or not there should be an order entered. So I agree, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It was unusual enough that I
It's
thought it
so
was worth
strange.
bringing up and bringing to the planning commission's attention, because it is something that it did affect a big group of residents, so it might be something that could come up in the future.
So how it affected zoning on the ZBA was that they wanted to put up a fence that was not allowed
Correct.
to make privacy reasonable, privacy considerations or whatever. So if that was already allowed, like, so if that was, that, in that scenario, the ZBA already had the ability to make a tweak to the zoning regulations to make that, to keep that area private. So I don't know
So.
what else that we needed.
Right. Well, the issue, I think, I do see how it could be land use related because of what you just said about the fence issue. But then, honestly, I don't know the specifics of the case, so I don't know in terms of whether it rises to the level of needing a variance, only because, you know, maybe if there's a physical characteristic of the land that allowed for the necessary of the fence. Needing the fence for a purpose that might seem nefarious isn't necessarily a reason to grant a variance, because it's supposed to be about the use of land. However, I have dealt with this before with other issues, and it's more of a neighbor versus neighbor situation. And the way I worked with it, and the way it worked into a zoning issue, is we do have our standards for fences, we do have heights, and we do have their location on the property line or within proximity to the property line. The solution I came up with was, this person had cameras on their house or pointing into someone's backyard, and I let them know, wow, you can't put your fence can only get up to 6 feet high. If you proposed a arbor or a trellis or some other landscape element that is at least X feet in that particular community, you have a setback, separation distance of 3 feet from the property line, then it's no longer considered a fence, it's a landscape feature, and I said, you can make 10 feet tall, 15 feet tall, as long as it's not higher than your fence. And the woman was able to do that, and then actually it's pretty nice, because it's, she had vines growing on it and everything, and so it was an ability, it's not a fence, because it's not defining a particular boundary, and it's not, because it's just an element, and because it's not it's not enclosing an area, so therefore another reason of not being a fence, but it is a large element that can block
A structure that can block it.
But it's also gonna take 3+ years to really black it out.
Well, but the good thing, it was a wooden trellis, or
Okay.
it was a lattice
Okay.
feature. So it was a lattice, so
Yep.
it was, so it was just a lattice element that could do that. So yeah, like if it was I can't remember, arbor or something. Yeah, you're right, some of the arbors have.
So you can have like an arborvitae's.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you can go that route even.
You can have arborvitae's, but they just couldn't become, because technically, sometimes we define in our ordinance, if you put it on the property line and it defines the area, technically that actually meets the definition of a fence, not in our ordinance. Okay, good.
Sweet, there we go.
But that's where it can come in a land use section. Like
Coming in clutch again.
Yeah, exactly. Some communities I have defines it as a fence because you're defining a boundary.
Right.
So
Yeah.
encourage planting trees, no matter what.
Yeah, we like trees.
Yeah, so that's a good thing. So there you go.
We like
I
to-
guess
But the problem then, you guys, in your thing, is that, you either plant smaller arborvitae's that are more cost effective, it takes too long to grow, or you
Yeah.
plant a 10-foot arborvitae, but you're paying through the nose tree.
That's an $800 cost.
That got approved?
It did, yeah.
So, in that case, it got approved, but I do see what you say about the ZBA. A zoning variance has got certain criteria that got to follow.
It
Say,
was based on the criteria. That was-
Right, yeah, exactly, I'm sure.
say for example, that criteria couldn't be met, but there still was a security issue. Maybe, just maybe, there could be something in the zoning ordinance that says the planning commission could allow fence height to address a security concern as approved by the planning commission. So I'm not proposing that, I'm just saying that's how it could tie into planning commission. And then the planning commission would have the ability to approve it or deny it, and wouldn't have to necessarily follow the exact criteria of a ZBA.
Right, no, that's a good point. I guess the only thing is then I'd want an opinion on whether, what's defined as a security issue.
Yeah, I'm with you.
But I think it's a very good point.
I would-
That by having it done by you guys, then you're not putting the ZBA in an awkward position of ensuring that it is, rises to the level of a variance approval, but at least this time it did, so that's a good thing.
I would hate to see something not get addressed, and it was a limiting factor of the planning commission, but I feel like currently there's other ways
Yeah,
Sounds like it.
to,
to address it.
yeah. Other miscellaneous business, and this is just something I want to throw out there, I kind of a surprise discussion, I have discussed it with Ross, and not saying we want to make any changes now, but I think that we do get into, our workshop meetings are 1 week after our regular planning commission meetings. And I feel like sometimes we get into a situation where we have a lot of discussion on a Tuesday regular meeting, and then the Wednesday meeting after that, 8 days later, there's not enough development on that issues and topics that we've talked about to really start making progress again 8 days later.
Yeah.
So it was just a thought, like, maybe in the future we can talk about figuring that issue out.
Scheduling them out.
I was thinking push it back a week. and
That's-
still have
that's a
more
thought.
time. Then we can have.
Then we have 2 weeks apart.
Discussion instead of things being rushed. When
Yeah.
you rush things, that's when mistakes happen.
Right, yep.
We don't want to work backwards, we want to be productive.
So with that, I know there's, the board sets the meeting agendas at a certain date. So I think that might be a topic we could bring up with the, that could be a topic that we could discuss with the board.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe there's a town hall committee meeting in here on the next Wednesday, I don't know. So, it's just a thought for now, and I think it could, increase our progress on certain items.
Yep. Now, what about next week?
I think next week, we wanna, for the workshop, we wanna see that if we can start making progress on data centers.
Okay, how soon do you think we can get that draft?
And back to the other conversation, it's not really 8 days like I mentioned, because we gotta have that, we wanna have the information into the packet
Right.
to have,
Right.
So it's really like
Like, I mean, if.
Yeah.
a couple days, so, I don't know about for next week, if that could be an agenda item.
It depends, I guess, I mean,
I can work on something tomorrow.
I would need it by like Monday morning.
Oh, that's
in order for that to happen.
So, we'll plan to have the workshop next week with that on the agenda. Accessory structures, we'll keep it on there. If you get any action done, if we don't get to it and get the discussion on it, like we said, I think that's our lowest priority of our outstanding items. But also, one more thing to discuss, is anything that we want to prepare for the joint board meeting. If there's something specifically we want to ask of them, I know it's a kind of a fine line, like asking direction, but kind of asking like vicinity. Are we moving down the right path in data centers? I know we did it, we had a good one during the master plan. We had a joint board meeting, we went over all the status of it. I think, Zach, you were on the board at the time.
Mhm.
So there's ways to do it without them saying, you need to do this, and maybe violate the rules or something. But, so if we had thoughts on what we want to ask of the board,
We're just gonna
Tell the
be
board.
chatting about it unless you want me to try to convert it. We don't technically need to make a motion.
no, we don't need to make a motion, no. I don't think we need to make a motion, it's just thoughts on,
Yeah. So we've got those three items. We've got data centers, we've got accessory structures, assuming that they'll be able to make enough progress, and then also the joint discussion with board.
yep. That's all I have.
Okay.
Anything else?
As far as data centers go, I've been trying to do some research, and there's a lot of propaganda out there, but finding hard data is hard. I know that MTA has some meetings, educational presentations coming up. How do we ask to go to those? Or-
Ask Ross.
Okay.
In the past,
It'll need to be approved by the board, I think.
in the past, Ross has suggested we go to certain educational training conferences or trainings. Unfortunately, the one that we usually get invited to, the community planner group, is like a reoccurring 6 weeks in a row at Thursday nights for 2.5 hours. And it's not a huge cost, but it was like $300 or something. And like, if I'm not gonna be able to make 2-3 of them, I didn't feel it was worthwhile to attend. And some of the topics were, I would say, pretty basic. But if there's one specific on data centers, I would encourage you to take that, send it to Ross, and, you know, it can then make its way back to the planning commission, or Ross can discuss it with
Yep.
officers
I'll
to,
get it to who needs to know.
yeah. And if it's an online, even more. You know, for one, that usually there's, or even free. If it's free, it's like, just send the link out, we just click on it. I don't need approval.
Yeah, I'd like to join you on them too, Seth.
Okay, I think there's like 4 coming up within the next 2 months, so.
Just to let you know, just in general, there's always the annual planning conference that the Michigan Association of Planners have. This year is going to be in Kalamazoo. And actually, this year, the National Planning Conference for Planners is going to be in Detroit. So I'll be in Detroit this April.
From what you've seen, Mario, you attend at least the Michigan one, and
Yeah.
is that is there like a lot of topics on data centers, or is that in the future you foresee that?
In the future, I can definitely foresee that. Basically, they put a call to the various professionals, and we may present them with ideas for topics. And then in the past, they've been trying to choose a theme. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way, but unfortunately, it's usually it is a broad range.
Yeah.
So it's not always like, sometimes, you know, we'll just admit that we're not, you know, something hasn't risen to the level of being risen to a level of being a conference topic. I mean, not a topic, but at least a session.
Yeah.
Because what they want, they want to show a lot of things that already been accomplished, or like they want to
Expert analysis.
Yeah, well, not even so much that, they would be able to say that this plan was done and this is what came of it.
Yeah.
And this is the solution you can do. So unfortunately, it's one of those things where like sometimes some of them can be more than. I do wish they were a little bit more of a information providing thing, but it doesn't happen. So the national conference, actually, I could see that having a lot of recent topics coming up. Of that. I could see that, because that is drawing people from throughout this country, of course. So. Yeah. But I would definitely keep in mind in terms of MTA or other organizations having it.
Very good. Anything else on miscellaneous business? Hearing none, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Support?
Motion and support to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Who supported that?
Me.
You did.
Thank you.
Of course. Evening?
What number?
6. You're like, no, it's terrible.
No, I usually use two.
Those are twos. Oh, these are twos. Twos.
That'd be the
Trips. But yeah, ever since you showed me that brand, I was like, oh shoot. I mean, it's that brand.
I actually changed it.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, but I like it.
Nice.
You know what drives me crazy? So I drive a Lightning, a F-150 Lightning.
Yeah.
And it has all those cameras, but for whatever reason, Ford doesn't let you record the video. I mean, the purpose is navigational, but like the security benefit of that is amazing. You know, if somebody hits you in the parking lot, you got a video of it.
Because the Tesla, don't they all record?
I think it's like automatic.
It's
Yeah.
It's completely automatic.
Where it goes right to your phone?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like as soon as
Do you like click on the camera and show?
yeah, like right now. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't get. I mean, 'cause that looks some
it's
of those.
wild.
That